I'm Brian Peterson. I'm the Urban Forestry Specialist with the City of Sioux Falls. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about emerald ash borer. Emerald ash borer is an invasive beetle that kills ash trees. It was first discovered in Sioux Falls in 2018, and it is still actively at large in our community. The city created a response plan in 2018 to identify and manage ash trees on city-owned property. With this response plan, we have been taking care of ash trees in those areas, and trees are dying from emerald ash borer. The other day, we took down a tree in Sherman Park that succumbed to emerald ash borer. The sheer number of beetles within that tree killed the tree. We want to urge private property owners to make a response plan for their own private property. The city has managed trees on city-owned property. It is time now to manage private property ash trees, and the time to act is now. As this insect kind of starts to spread across Sioux Falls, it's time for you to have a plan for those trees. Over the next 5 years, I encourage you to think about your options. You may have 3 or 4 ash trees on private property. Maybe you look to take 1 or 2 trees out now. Maybe you look at treating those trees. Whatever is right for you is going to be specific to your property. And the first step is identifying whether you have an ash tree or not. For identifying an ash trees are one of 3 trees that have oppositely branched and opposite leaf patterns. When I say opposite branching, it is branches that come directly opposite one another going down the twig. Leaves are the same way. When the leaves come out, they'll be opposite one another. Ash trees have compound leaves, and they have a bark pattern typical of diamond shape displayed. Maple, ash, and dogwood are the only trees that are oppositely branched. So if you have an oppositely branched tree with a compound leaf, you have an ash tree on your private property, and those trees would be affected by the emerald ash borer. So it is time to decide now what you're going to do over the next 5 years as this infestation continues to spread across Sioux Falls. With the death of ash trees in Sioux Falls, it takes a lot of beetles to kill a tree. Trees become overwhelmed. I will pass this around in a little bit so people can take a close-up shot and see the number of larvae underneath this tree, which killed one of our park trees in Sherman Park. With trees dying and leaf and branch drop-off sites opening up this weekend, those sites are open to private property owners. They're not open for commercial use. To speak more on that, we have Josh Peterson here today to talk about those leaf and branch drop sites.
Thanks, Brian. I'm Josh Peterson. I'm the Environmental Services Manager for the City of Sioux Falls. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some information I want to share with the public with our 2 free leaf and branch drop-off sites that are opening up this Saturday. We have a similar setup as we have in years past. We've got 2 sites. One is at North Lions Boulevard, just south of the fairgrounds. And the other one is on Chambers Street next to the city's household hazardous waste facility. Both those sites are going to be open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays, and on Sundays they'll be open from 12 to 5 p.m. And those sites run until November 26th this year. Those sites, like Ryan said, are free for residents to use. You can bring in cars, pickups, full-size SUVs, vans, and 2-wheel trailers, just kind of the passenger size type vehicles. These are for private residential use. They're not for commercial use, so lawn service companies and commercial businesses can't use these public drop-off sites. They would still need to go to the landfill to dispose it at a city facility or any other private facility they want to go to. A few rules for people just to remember as they're bringing their loads to these sites. Branches and leaves must be placed in separate piles. We put the yard waste in one and the wood waste in another. Make sure if you're bringing materials in plastic bags, we want those bags removed. As we're composting and recycling these materials, that just creates some contamination. All loads must be tarped or put in a covered vehicle. We want to make sure we're keeping our roads clean and nothing is getting lost on the way to the sites. And just as a reminder, it is just for yard waste and for wood waste. Don't bring in plastic bags, stumps, rubble, household trash. That's not what these sites are for. Another great thing we've got, we'll have a couple of roll-off dumpsters at each site for pumpkins. As people are decorating for their fall and the fall holidays, we want to make sure those are diverted from the landfill. So instead of throwing them away, bring them out, and we'll make sure they get recycled. These sites have been very popular in the past. We get residents that who are using it, and we're happy to provide it to make sure we're keeping the city clean. And it's a great timely thing as people are winding down their summer season, getting ready for winter, to clean up their properties and get rid of any of that waste that's been building up. The purpose of these is really to make sure that we're keeping the city clean and taking pride in our community. And the other reason we do this is so that we can help divert these materials from the landfill. Anything that's collected there or at the landfill in our public drop-off area where you can drop off branches or yard waste, we divert that. Wood waste is ground up and sold for fuel for private businesses, and then our yard waste is also composted at the landfill, and then that compost is available free to residents to come in and use for gardening or other purposes. So with that diversion, we're looking at about 5,000 tons a year that we're keeping out of the landfill on average. And so it's been a great program, and we want to continue to do that. On a sideline note, with the season winding down and we're getting close to the end of the year, I want to remind people, if you haven't used your free landfill pass for the year, take advantage of that. This is a great opportunity for you to get rid of that waste you've been collecting in your property for free. It's an annual pass this year, so you can go all the way up till December 31st. Then it'll reset for another one, and so don't miss out on your opportunity to use that for this year. All you need to do is bring a driver's license to get scanned in, so we track it by your property. And if you're new to Sioux Falls and your ID doesn't match your address, you bring in some mail that shows where you live, and we can help you utilize that. Another thing that will be coming up later in the year, we will reopen our waste drop-off sites after the Christmas season to get rid of those Christmas trees for you. And so looking for that, opening up December 26th and closing in early January. A couple things we've changed this year. We've extended our normal operations from 7:30 to 5 p.m. That was our extended season during the summer. We've made that a year long, so you've got a little extra time if you're coming out to utilize our public drop-off site at the landfill. And just a reminder, we are closed on federal holidays, so Native American Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, so plan accordingly. If you have any questions, you can always visit our website, siouxfalls.org/landfill, where we've got all our information on how to utilize both the public drop-off sites and our free pass for the year. So with that, we'll take questions if.
The pumpkins separated into roll-off dumpster. Just talk a little bit about why they're separate.
We actually use those. We don't compost them, and they're not wood waste. We've got a good herd of deer that live out at our landfill site, so we'll actually set those out in the buffer zone, and we feed the wildlife in the area. So it's just a good use that we're helping support the population.
Do they create any methane or anything else? Is there in the compost or in the landfill?
No, what we do with the composting, we turn that so we're getting air into the system, so it doesn't generate the methane. It's an aerobic process which doesn't create the methane.
You said 5,000 pounds?
5,000 tons.
Yeah. So that's about what gets picked up at the 2 sites?
Yep, 2 sites plus our public drop-off area at the landfill as well.
And then, can you give me the hours again?
It is, it's 9 to 5 on Mondays through Saturdays, and then noon to 5 on Sunday.
Josh, you mentioned those stumps. How big of wood waste do people bring out to the drop-off sites?
We will take full trees. What we want to do is avoid the stumps themselves because they have the soil contamination in there, and that causes some problems with the grinding operations, and so we avoid those. That's something you can take directly to the landfill.
Related to Emerald Ash Borer, do you know if there's been success with any of the treatments?
The question was related to emerald ash borer. Do I know if there has been success with treatments for emerald ash borer? Yes, there has been success to treatments with emerald ash borer. The science behind treatments using emamectin benzoate as a product, there is up to 98% success rate. Now, with treatments on any given ash tree, it is dependent on the condition of the tree itself, as well as the applicator applying that chemical, time of year, a lot of factors that go into measuring the overall success of those treatments. The product itself is very successful and effective at doing so, but you need to consider all of those factors when considering treatments.
So, if we're thinking about finding a plan, are there trees that are available to replace those?
Certainly. So for replacement trees, question was looking at new trees to plant after ash trees are either removed or die from emerald ash borer. There are a lot of great trees available to plant in Sioux Falls, and a lot of the nurseries and wholesalers in the community are working directly with the forestry team to identify a wide variety and diversity of new trees to be planted. Those trees are readily available for customers to purchase every year to replant. And when homeowners are making their response plan over the next 5 years to deal with ash trees on private property, certainly something to consider. With private property, you have a little more options than you would in the boulevard area. You can look at removing now, removing later. You can also plant trees underneath existing trees, something we do not allow in the boulevards, but something that a property owner can consider doing now as well, to underplant ash trees and look at budgeting for removal of those trees at a later date when they can afford it. Any given tree removal on private property can cost upwards of, $1,000, $2,000. So it's a large expense that property owners are going to have to incur. And that is why we encourage them, looking over the next 5-year span, have that response for your own private property so you don't become overwhelmed. And that is what we did with our city-owned property ash trees, and what I really want to encourage for private property owners to do as well.
Yeah, estimate ballpark of how many ash trees you think are in the city?
Sure. So when we started in 2019, on the street, there was 22,000 ash trees along our city streets. That accounted for about 41% of our street trees. So again, a large number of ash trees on city-owned property, why we created a response plan so we did not become overwhelmed with expense of removing trees. With private property trees, there was an estimated 44,000 ash trees on private property. What other species are out there to compare that to, I can't speak to at this time, as far as what percentage that would account for on the private property side.
Has the city treated any of its trees? Or has it all been removed?
The city has not treated any trees at this point in time, and that was mainly because it accounted for 40% of trees on city-owned property. This was an opportunity for us to remove trees and increase our overall tree diversity. An ideal urban forest has no more than 10% of any one species, 15% any one genus, 20% of any one family. And when we had 40% just ash trees, that represented a huge problem for this urban forest. There are trees in the city boulevard that are being treated by abutting homeowners, property owners. We do not intend to remove trees that owners want to treat in that boulevard right-of-way area. As of right now, there are roughly 6,000 ash trees along our streets that are being treated by abutting property owners, and we have no intent on removing those trees.
In terms of expense, in terms of how many ash trees there are, has the city given any thought for any programs to assist with either removal or treatment or anything like that? Because I think each chunk of the growth experience involved in still drastically different, both in terms of the environment and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So a question was on future city programs to help private property owners with response to emerald ash borer. At this point in time, we do not have a plan in place to assist private property owners with that. Trees growing on private property are the responsibility of the private property owner. Similar to how Dutch elm disease came through in the 70s, a lot of elm trees died off. With private property, it's a very similar scenario. Property owners are responsible for the trees growing on private property.